I was going to do so much. Peter, the rock, the one that he could depend on. But I let him down. I remember the first time I saw him. We were on the water's edge tending our nets when Jesus arrived with a large crowd of people. They were all trying to hear what he had to say, and he climbed aboard our boat. We pushed out just a short way from the shore, and Jesus stood and he spoke to the people. He was so easy to understand, so clever with his words. After he finished talking to them, he said to us, "Put your boat out into the water and put down your nets." We'd fished all night and we'd caught nothing, not even a sardine. We were exhausted. I won't tell you what Andrew, my brother, said, but there was something in the way that he spoke. So we did it. We pushed out into the water and threw down our nets. Immediately, they were so full that we could hardly manage them. We had to call the Zebedee brothers, James and John, to help us get them ashore. That was when he called us to be fishers of men. We left everything, our nets, boats, families, our lives, and we followed him. We saw some incredible things. There was this time where we were out on the lake and the wind just blew up a tempest like I've never seen before. Well, I've been around boats all my life and I don't mind admitting I was scared. We threw everything overboard. And someone noticed that Jesus was asleep in the aft of the boat. We pleaded with him, "Master, Master, we're going to drown." He stood up and said, "O ye of little faith." Then he turned to the storm and said, "Peace, be still." And immediately the lake was like a sheet of glass. Then there was another time. We were miles away, miles from anywhere, and Jesus was talking to a large crowd. We reckoned on about 5,000 men, not to mention all the women and children. Time was moving on, and well, people were getting hungry. So we said to the master, "Let the people go to the villages so that they can get food." He turned to us and he said, "You feed them." Judas, the keeper of the purse, nearly fainted. There was no way we had enough money to pay to feed them, and nowhere to buy the food anyway. We started to scout around to see if there was any food, and we found nothing. And then a young boy tugged at my coat. He handed me a small package which contained 5 small loaves and just 2 small fish. Jesus laughed when I gave it to him, and he smiled at the boy. Then he held it high and he thanked his Father in heaven for the food, and then he broke it and gave it to us to pass out. He broke it and broke it and broke it, and the same with the fish. He kept breaking it, passing it out, and it just kept coming. When we had all had our fill, and trust me, we had our fill, all 5,000 men and the women and the children were all full. And you know what? We had 12 baskets of leftovers. With Jesus, the blind saw, the deaf heard, the lame walked, even the dead came back to life. He is amazing. He told me I'd let him down, you know. He knew. We were at the meal table in the upper room, and after the meal, Jesus took a loaf of bread and he broke it, saying, "Take, eat, this is my body which is broken for you." Then he took a cup of wine and said, "This wine is my blood which is shed for you. Whenever you eat it, this bread, and drink this wine, remember me." We didn't understand. We didn't have a clue. Then he stood and said, "I tell you the truth, all of you will let me down." Well, I stood to my feet and I said, "No, Lord, not me. These others may be, but I will never let you down, not even to the point of death." Jesus looked at me and he said, "I tell you the truth. Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. He knew. We left there and went to the Garden of Gethsemane, and Jesus gave us 2 instructions: to watch and to pray. Well, we just had our meal and it'd been a busy day and it was a warm day, and so we fell asleep. 3 times he came back to us and told us to watch and pray, and 3 times we fell asleep. The 3rd time he said, "Are you still sleeping? Enough! The hour has come. The Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners." And just then, a large mob arrived with swords and clubs, and Judas Iscariot was at their lead. He stepped forward and kissed Jesus. That was the sign, you see. I tried to defend him. I drew my sword and I sliced the ear of the high priest's servant clean off. But Jesus stopped me. They took him and we scattered like rats. I followed at a safe distance and I watched as they dragged him through a farce of a trial. It was just full of hate and lies. They were out to get him, no matter what the cost. They beat him and they spat on him. And I stood there and watched. Well, what could I have done? Just then, one of the servant girls said to me, "You also were there with Jesus of Nazareth." I just turned to her and said, "No, I don't know what you're saying." It was a cold night, so I moved closer to the fire to warm myself. But again she said, "I know you are one of his followers. I've seen you with him." "I tell you I am not," I said, turning away from her. Then another man said, "Yeah, I've seen you in the temple with him." I stood up and I said, "Listen, I don't know that man." I turned. I pointed at Jesus and Jesus looked at me. Just then, the cock crowed and I realized what I'd done. He knew. They bruised and they beat him with fists and clubs. The whip was next. They knew how to use it. Lash after lash tore through the flesh on his back. They forced him to carry the cross that would be his own weapon of murder through the streets. He couldn't manage it. It's hardly surprising after what they'd done to him. He stumbled and he fell. And I rushed forward to help, but a Roman soldier held me back, and instead another man from the crowd was forced to carry his cross. It should have been me. They nailed through his wrists and his ankles. With each nail, I felt the shame of letting him down. They wrapped him in a purple robe and shoved a crown made of thorns on his head. I watched as the cross was pulled upwards and jolted down into place, jerking his whole body. And above his head was a sign that read, "The King of the Jews." They laughed at him, mocked him. Somehow, he found the strength to forgive them. Forgive? I don't know how he did that. Then he found the strength to release a final cry, a cry of triumph. "It is finished!" He hung there. And he did die. I saw it. They took his body and they lay him in a stone tomb and rolled a large stone across the front. It was over. He was dead. It was finished. We were finished. For 3 days, Jesus was dead. And then, 3 days later, that stone was rolled away, and Jesus is alive. And now he's here again. What am I going to say to him?
Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these?
Yes, Lord. You know that I love you.
Feed my lambs. Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these?
Yes. Lord, you know that I love you.
Tend my sheep. Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these?
Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you.